This is Project Audion, timeless audio dramas for modern times, created the classic way.
Hello, I'm Larry Groby with the Generic Radio Workshop. And let's talk for a moment about this fellow, Sherlock Holmes, the consulting detective created by Arthur Conan Doyle almost 140 years ago. A figure so influential, so definitive that he has affected every literary detective that's come along ever since, from Hercule Poirot to Cormorant Strike. Now, Mr. Doyle saw Sherlock through some 60 stories and eventually saw him off Reichenbach files. But that wasn't enough for the millions of Sherlock Holmes fans out there. They demanded more. They wanted to see him in the movies. They wanted to hear him on the radio, watch him on TV. Holmes was the subject of several radio series from 1930 until 1950. Nearly 400 episodes, in fact. With Sherlock Holmes' creator having passed away, the producers of the radio series were able to use up all the stories that they could, and then had to hire new writers to craft new adventures of Sherlock Holmes. And that is what you'll be hearing today. One of those scripts. In fact, this script was broadcast on the Mutual Radio Network on January 15th, 1945, and then never aired again. So this Project Audion recreation is your first chance to hear this mystery in 80 years. And that leaves another mystery. Who wrote the script? It's credited to two gentlemen, actor, writer, Sherlock scholar Dennis Green, and someone named Bruce Taylor. Some detective work reveals that Bruce Taylor is an alias. The real author of this episode and about 24 other radio Sherlock Holmes is this guy, Leslie Charteris, becoming a famous mystery author in his own right, thanks to a character he had created, Simon Templar, aka the Saint. He had to use an alias because he didn't want to be caught competing with himself. Well, that's one mystery solved, one more to go. Can Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson escape the curse of Dr. Anselmo? Sit back in your easy chair, pour yourself a glass of fine Petri wine, and join our transcontinental Project Audion cast as we recreate, for the first time in 80 years, this episode of the New Adventures of Sherlock Holmes.
Petri Wine brings you Basil Rathbone and Nigel Bruce in The New Adventures of Sherlock Holmes.
The Petri family, the family that took time to bring you good wine, invites you to listen to Dr. Watson tell us another exciting adventure he shared with his old friend, that brilliant detective Sherlock Holmes. And say, while you lend an ear to the good doctor, you'll get a lot of pleasure out of a glass of rich, ruby-red Petri California port. Just sit back and sip that Petri port leisurely. There's a wine that's just perfect after dinner. A wine that really goes with storytelling and conversation. Petri port is as rich in flavor as it is in color. And what a flavor. Full, hearty, and delicious. I can't think of a better way to express your hospitality than to offer your friends a glass of good Petri port. Serve that Petri port alone, or serve it with fruit and nuts, or with cake or sandwiches. No matter how you serve it, you can serve that Petri port proudly, because the name Petri is the proudest name in the history of American wines. And now, let's drop in on Dr. Watson as he sits waiting for us in the comfortable study of his modest home. Good evening, Doctor.
Oh, good evening, Mr. Foreman. It's a terrible night. Come in out of the cold and make yourself comfortable in front of the fire. Well, that's it.
Sitting here without the lights on, eh, Doctor? I suppose you've been getting yourself in the mood for tonight's story?
Oh, you're quite right, my boy. The shadows cast by the flickering firelight seem to me to fit in perfectly with the weird story I'm going to tell you tonight. So, if you don't mind, we'll leave the lights off.
That's okay with me, Doctor. I'm right in the mood for a good spooky story.
Splendid! There's some tobacco in the jar beside you. Fill your pipe and settle back while I tell you the strange story of Dr. Anselmo.
Dr. Anselmo? Who was he? Some medical friend of yours?
Oh, dear me, no. Anselmo had no medical degree. If he was a doctor of anything, I would say it would have been black magic or witchcraft.
Black magic? Sounds exciting. How did you and Sherlock Holmes come to meet up with him?
Holmes met him before I did. You see, Dr. Anselmo was quite a sensational criminal in his day, and for many years the police of several countries were hot on his trail. In 1891, or perhaps it was 92, Holmes succeeded in tracking him down and finally capturing him in a spectacular style in a burning cargo ship 20 miles out to sea.
Say, that sounds like quite a story in itself, Doctor.
Oh, it was, Mr. Foreman. It was. But that will have to wait until another of our Monday evenings.
Well, that's a date.
But to get on with tonight's story, Dr. Anselmo was brought to trial and sentenced to 20 years in prison. Holmes, of course, was the principal witness against him. And as they led Anselmo out of the court, he shouted dire threats at Holmes and promised a terrible revenge.
Oh, and did he try to get that revenge, Doctor?
Yes, he did, Mr. Foreman. 20 years later, almost to the day, Mrs. Hudson ushered him into our rooms in Baker Street. He was an extraordinarily looking man. He must have been 70 then, gaunt and withered, but he had the most amazing eyes I've ever seen. Jet black and staring. They seemed to hypnotize one. It was a strange scene that February night in 1911. Holmes and I sat each side of the fireplace, and our strange visitor stood between us, waving an accusing finger at the great man. I can almost hear him now as he said,
Mr. Holmes, you weren't expecting to see me, were you?
I am not surprised to see you, Dr. Anselmo. Oh, by the way, this is my friend, Dr. Watson.
How do you do, sir?
Dr. Watson, eh? What kind of doctor do you call yourself?
Oh, I don't call myself any kind of doctor. I hold the degree of the Doctor of Medicine from the University of London.
A doctor of medicine. Too bad that your medical knowledge can do nothing to prevent the tragedy that is about to overwhelm your friend, Mr. Holmes.
Dr. Anselmo, I suggest that you sit down and talk rationally. I am not easily frightened, I assure you. Countless criminals have threatened me with vengeance, and yet here I am, still here to prove their threats idle ones.
Really? How very interesting. Sherlock Holmes, for 20 long years you sent Anselmo to prison. For 20 long years I have been planning my revenge.
Well, that is very foolish of you. You're an old man. You might as well enjoy the years left to you in freedom instead of taking the chance of going back to prison by making an attempt upon my life.
The years that are left to me? There are 11 days left to me before I pass into another better sphere. I am going to die at 5 o'clock on Thursday week.
But that's ridiculous. How can you possibly predict such a thing?
Because I have knowledge far beyond your mortal ken. In the 20 years I spent in prison, Mr. Holmes, I have been developing the powers I have always possessed. powers that you would refer to as supernatural. I have perfected them, Mr. Holmes, and now the time has come for my revenge.
Then may I ask just what form that revenge is supposed to take?
Oh, you may. In fact, I insist on telling you.
Ah.
That is why I have come here today. I wish to forewarn you, so that every terrifying incident will be significant to you as it happens. Oh, you will suffer as you made me suffer. Slowly, surely, you will realize that an unearthly power is at work against you and leading you inevitably to a horrible death.
Dr. Anselmo, you're talking absolute nonsense.
Oh, am I? In 11 days I shall be dead. Until my death you will be safe. But as soon as some useless doctor of medicine has pronounced me dead, I shall begin to work on you. And you will be powerless. You who regard yourself as invincible. I shall reach out from beyond the grave to put the curse of Anselmo on you.
Ah.
Beware of cats. Be frightened of spilled salt, and of pictures that fall from walls. Expect a strange sickness, and watch for the number 13. And remember, when you see a flaming corpse, your end is near. Good evening, gentlemen. I shall not see you again, but I shall talk to you again. I shall talk to you just before I die.
Well, upon my soul.
What, Watson, I don't think I've ever seen you look so taken aback.
I must admit, Holmes, that man's behavior absolutely staggers me.
I shouldn't pay too much attention to him if I were you. He's a harmless crank.
I hope you're right, Holmes. But in his day, he was an extremely dangerous criminal, wasn't he?
In his day, yes. But his day is long past.
Didn't he have quite a reputation for indulging in dark masses and sorcery and all that nonsense?
Yes. In fact, he wrote a reasonably interesting book on the subject, and during his criminal career, he had quite the reputation for unusual powers. It was commonly believed by his associates, anyway, that he was a mind reader. Also, as I recall, he was said to have the ability to see through locked doors and move objects miles away by sheer willpower.
I don't like the way he threatened you tonight. I think you should be very careful. He's a dangerous man.
Hardly. He's a charlatan. If he had any of the powers that he claimed, how was I able to capture him the first time? And why didn't his supernatural friends rescue him from prison? No, Watson, I'm too old a hand in this criminal sphere to be frightened by the threats of an elderly fake.
Just the same, Holmes, I've never seen a man look at you with more intense hatred. His eyes were positively blazing. I tell you, I don't like the look of it.
Don't worry about it, my dear Watson. At least for 11 days.
That's right. He said he was going to die a week from Thursday at 5 o'clock. I wonder.
Ah.
Holmes, do you know what day it is?
Of course I do. Thursday.
And the time?
4 p.m., according to the clock on the mantelpiece. Why?
I was thinking of Dr. Anselmo's warning. Remember, he said he was going to die at 5 o'clock today.
Oh, I'd forgotten all about that.
I hadn't. In fact, I've been worrying quite a bit about those threats of his.
Really, Watson, I shall begin to believe in his power if you keep this up. You seem to be completely under his spell.
I can't help it. Ever since he came here, I've had a strange feeling that... What's that?
Oh, you are jumpy. It's only the telephone. I'll answer it. Hello.
Sherlock Holmes.
Speaking. Who is this?
Dr. Anselmo.
Ah, Dr. Anselmo. What can I do for you?
Dr. Anselmo, I knew it. I knew
Quiet, quiet, Watson. Yes, Doctor?
My hour has almost come, Mr. Holmes. I am on my deathbed. If you would like to have your last laugh, come and gloat over me. You will have very little to laugh about after I'm gone.
Dr. Anselmo, I have no desire to gloat over your deathbed.
Oh, you'd better come just the same. And bring your doctor friend also. He can make sure that I'm dead. My address is 116 Queens Road, Bayswater. Will you come?
Certainly not.
Afraid of a trap, eh? Why don't you bring your friend Dr. Watson? Or Inspector Lestrade? Bring a dozen policemen if you like. But no policeman will be able to save you when your time comes. And it's coming soon. Very soon.
Dr. Anselmo! Dr. Anselmo! Melodramatic fool.
What did he say, Holmes?
He suggested that we go round to his house and watch him die. He even suggested I take Lestrade with me.
Are you going?
Of course not. I don't even imagine he's actually ill.
I wish you would go, Holmes. It may seem silly, but I'd really feel happier if I saw him again. I can't explain it, but I know that once it's past 5 o'clock and I see Anselmo alive, I will cease worrying.
I do believe you're serious, old fellow.
I am, Holmes. Deadly serious.
All right, Watson. If it will take that worried look off your face, we'll go. But I warn you, you are going to feel silly when you find Dr. Anselmo very much alive and kicking.
I hope you're right, Holmes, but I have a strange presentiment.
Do you think I should follow Anselmo's advice and get in touch with Inspector Lestrade?
I don't care about Lestrade. I just have to see this thing through for myself.
Going out, Mr. Holmes?
Oh, yes, Mrs. Hudson, but we'll be back for dinner.
Oh, very good, sir. I'm having steak and kidney pie tonight.
Oh, splendid. See if you can get a cab, Watson.
Oh, there's one coming now. Cabby! Cabby! Oh, he's got a passenger.
Oh. Looks as if he's stopping here. He is. Hello, it's Lestrade.
Lestrade? But how in...
Afternoon, Mr. Holmes. Afternoon, Doctor. Didn't keep you waiting, I hope.
What made you think I was expecting you, Lestrade?
I got a message.
What message, Lestrade?
To come over here and drive over with you both to see some man who's dying in Bayswater.
How did you get that message?
On the telephone, not much more than half an hour ago.
Who spoke to you?
Some old geezer with a bad cough.
Obviously, it was Dr. Anselmo.
Of course it was. One of the standard tricks he used in the old days to impress people with his so-called powers. Back in the cab, Lestrade. Get in, Watson.
Where to, Governor?
116 Queens Road, Bayswater, driver.
There you are, Governor. 116 it be.
Ooh, gloomy-looking house, I must say.
Yes, Doctor, all the blinds are down, too.
Here you are, cabby. You may keep the change.
Oh, why, thank you, Governor.
Look, the door's opening. A man's coming out.
Top hat, frock coat, and black bag. I think we may reasonably assume he's a physician.
Here he comes down the steps. Might as well ask him.
Excuse me, sir. Dr. Anselmo lives here, does he not?
Dr. Anselmo is dead, gentlemen, as of 5 minutes ago. Heart failure. I was his physician. You'll find Mrs. Anselmo in the house. I'm going to make arrangement with the undertakers. Good evening, gentlemen.
Lestrade, what's the time?
Well, let me see. 5 past 5, Dr. Watson.
You see, Holmes? He died 5 minutes ago. That means he kept the first part of his prediction. He said he'd die at 5 o'clock today.
Are we going in, Mr. Holmes?
I think not. It hardly seems in the best of taste when the man has just passed.
When the front door's opening again, there's an old woman coming out. That must be Mrs. Anselmo.
Come in, Mr. Sherlock Holmes. We're expecting you.
Madam, in view of the circumstances, I
Come
think...
in! That is the way Luigi wishes it.
Might as well humor her, Holmes.
Very well, madam.
Follow me. There he lies. Observe him well, Mr. Holmes. Gloat over your handiwork. You ruined his life and brought him to an early death.
Madam, I hardly think we show the best manners if we speak this way over your husband's deathbed.
Death! What do you know of death? Or of life? Luigi's not really dead. His spirit lives. He will come back and fulfill his promise. Oh, he will get his revenge. Your hours are numbered, Sherlock Holmes, and you will be powerless to prevent the final tragedy. And now, go. All of you, go! Luigi wishes to give me his final instructions. God! Get out, you murderers!
Upon my soul, Holmes, I don't like this business. And I don't think Lestrade did either. I think he wanted to stay with you when you insisted on dropping him off at the yard.
My dear fellow, I think the sooner we all forget about this, the better. Watson, in the 20th century, people do not reach out from the grave to have their revenge. Well, here we are back home at Baker Street. Here you are, Cabby.
Oh, why, thank you, Governor.
I can still see those staring eyes of Dr. Anselmo. Even in death, he looked incredibly evil. As for his wife, she sent chills up and down my spine.
Really, Doctor, if you continue in this vein, I shall begin to believe that the Anselmo family has cast a spell on you.
I can't help it, Holmes. I have a strange feeling. Holmes, look at that!
Oh, it's only a cat, my dear fellow.
Yeah, a black cat. Remember what Anselmo said about black cats.
I think you need a strong cup of tea, Watson. Mrs. Hudson?
Yes, Mr. Holmes?
We'd like a pot of good black tea, please.
Aye, sir. I'll bring it up right away. Now, don't you go spoiling your supper. I've got that grand pie waiting for you.
Ah. You do know, Watson, that the appearance of that cat was only a coincidence.
Was it? In all the years that I've lived here, I've never seen a cat inside the house before. Mrs. Hudson can't abide them, you know.
Yes. Well, she must have left the back door open and the animal slipped in. We'll ask her in a moment. It is good to be home again and shed the atmosphere of that wretched place.
Holmes, look there, on the table.
Oh, matches. Matches laid in an orderly row.
Yeah, 13 matches. Look over there on the small table. A salt shaker laying on its side, a pile of salt on the floor.
Oh, dear me, they're being very generous with their ill omens. I should have thought they would have all come more gradually. Don't tell me they've omitted the broken picture. Oh, no. There it is in the fireplace.
Oh, a photograph of you, Holmes. And the glass is smashed to smithereens.
Well, they showed good judgment. I've always hated that picture.
It's all very well to make a joke of it, Holmes, but the fact remains you're in obvious danger.
Oh, come, Doctor. Some confederate of the late Dr. Anselmo obviously broke into the house while we were out. He probably left these little mementos of his visit in hopes of frightening me into believing that this curse of Anselmo was beginning to work.
Here's your tea, gentlemen.
Thank you, Mrs. Hudson. Oh, by the way, while we were out, did anyone come to the door?
No, sir. No one.
And you heard no unusual noises?
No, sir. Oh, is anything wrong, Mr. Holmes?
No, I was just curious. Oh, incidentally, though, a black cat greeted us as we opened the door just now.
Cat? Oh, you mean inside the house?
Yes. I thought perhaps you might have left the back door open.
Oh, no, sir. That I didn't. And if I'd seen that cat...
Holmes, come over here to the window.
What is it?
Look down. The man standing there under the gas lamp. Confound it. He turned away.
Well, what about him?
He was looking up at this window with a strange expression on his face. And I recognize him beyond any shadow of a doubt.
Well, who was it?
Dr. Anselmo. Hello, Holmes. Feeling any better today?
Hello, Watson. You had a busy day?
Extremely. Oh, this filthy weather's producing an epidemic of bad colds and subpneumonia cases. Are you feeling any better yourself?
I'm all right.
Oh, you're not all right. Your color's shocking. And you've just been lying about listlessly for the last 2 days. Ever since Anselmo died. I wish you would let me take your temperature.
I tell you, I'm all right, Watson. Just let me rest. Don't fuss over me like an old hen.
Oh, it's not like you to be so bad-tempered, Holmes.
I'm sorry, Watson. I do feel a little off my game.
Sure you're not worrying about Dr. Anselmo's threat?
Quite sure.
Remember, he told you to be aware of strange sickness.
I recall, yes.
This might be it, you know.
Oh, not a bit of it. There's a perfectly natural explanation for everything. If any indisposition of mine had anything to do with Anselmo, it would be caused in some material way. For instance, it would be perfectly easy to put some drug in our milk bottles as they stand on the doorstep.
That seems a bit far-fetched. And wouldn't it affect me too? I tell you, I'm worried about the whole thing. I don't believe in the supernatural any more than you do, and yet there's one thing you can't be explained in any normal way.
And what is that?
3 times in the past 2 days. I swear I've seen Anselmo. He's always in a crowd, and when I try and get to him, he's gone.
Come in.
Here's a package for you, Mr. Holmes. An old man just brought it.
Oh, thank you, Mrs. Hudson.
Did you recognize the man?
Aye, Doctor. It was the old gentleman that called on you a fortnight ago, Dr. Anselmo.
Oh.
Dr. Anselmo?
Will there be anything else, Mr. Holmes?
No, thank you, Mrs. Hudson.
What in thunder's going on? Anselmo's dead, remember? I took the trouble to check the credentials of the doctor who signed his death certificate.
Yes, well, it seems that Dr. Anselmo must have a convincing double.
What's in the package, Holmes?
Just a small cardboard box. Oh. Very interesting.
A little wax figure. It's a reasonably good likeness of you.
Indeed. And you may notice that it has a large pin stuck through its head and another through its heart. In the language of voodooism and the black arts, that should indicate my approaching demise.
You're not frightened, Holmes?
Oh, of course not. Watson, I'm not some superstitious native in darkest Africa of old. I'm an intelligent man in London in the 20th century. And I think it's high time I put a stop to all this preposterous nonsense.
What are you going to do?
I'm going to confront Mrs. Ens... Oh, now who can that be? Hello.
Sherlock Holmes.
Speaking.
This is Madeline Anselmo. My husband's funeral is to be held at midnight in Hampstead Cemetery. He has told me that he wishes you to be there. Also, your doctor friend and the police inspector. Shall I tell him to expect you?
Yes, Mrs. Anselmo. You may expect the three of us at midnight.
Dr. Watson will continue his story in just a few seconds, during which time I'd like to talk specifically to the ladies, if I may, and tell you about Petri, California Muscatel. Just as Petri, California Port has long been known as the wine of gentlemen, Petri Muscatel has been known as the favorite of the ladies. That's because Petri Muscatel is a golden-colored wine that looks like captured sunshine and tastes as... Well, did you ever taste big, plump muscat grapes, picked when they're still misty and dew-covered? If you have, you know what to expect when you taste Petri Muscatel. The flavor of Petri Muscatel comes right from the very heart of luscious, hand-picked muscat grapes. You couldn't ask for a more delicious wine than Muscatel. Petri Muscatel. And now, back to tonight's show. Sherlock Holmes' new adventure. An elderly criminal by the name of Dr. Anselmo, just before his death, threatened Holmes that he would reach out from beyond the grave to get his revenge. His sinister warning was followed shortly by his death, and then by a strange series of events revolving around the great detective. As we rejoin our story, Holmes and Dr. Watson, accompanied by Inspector Lestrade, are attending the midnight funeral of Dr. Anselmo in Hampstead Cemetery.
We therefore commit his body in the ground, earth to earth, ashes to ashes, dust to dust, looking for the general resurrection in the last day and the life of the world.
Why do you suppose they chose midnight to have the burial, Mr. Holmes?
For its theatrical effect, of course. It's all in keeping with the ridiculous mumbo-jumbo this case has been hit with from the beginning.
Shh! They're lifting up the coffin from the cart. Are we going to follow it?
Of course we are. Come on, let's go into the churchyard.
Oh, what a weird atmosphere. And that watery moon. Oh, enough to give you the creeps.
Oh, you don't have to give them to me, Dr. Watson. I've got them.
The grave must be over there, where those lanterns are. Come on.
Holmes. There's someone following us. It's Mrs. Anselmo.
Mr. Holmes, I knew you would not be able to resist an opportunity to come gloat over the dead. You devil! 20 years you took my husband from me. 20 years you made him rot in a prison cell.
Madam, I see that they're carrying your husband's coffin out to his grave. I suggest we all follow. Now, Mrs. Anselmo, I came here in answer to your rather insistent invitation, but I assure you, I have no desire to celebrate the death of your husband.
Oh, you lie. But what difference does it make? Nothing will matter to you much longer, because your time has nearly come.
Mrs. Anselmo, shall we proceed with the burial? Everything is ready.
Yes, you may proceed.
Great heavens! Look!
Come back here! Come back here!
Look over there, at the strange figure. It's Anselmo, walking amongst the tombstones.
Yes, and the figure's luminous. It looks as if it were on fire.
Remember his threat, Holmes. When you see a flaming corpse, your end will be near.
Well, confound it, when those grave diggers ran, they took their lanterns with them.
Oh, not frightened, are you, Mr. Holmes? Luigi will light the way for you.
The figure stopped. It's speaking.
Come to me, wife. Stand away from those men, and I shall strike them with lightning.
I come, Luigi. I come. Come.
You are about to pay the penalty, Mr. Holmes. Nothing can save you. Come with me, Madeline.
They're moving away. They've disappeared in the blackness.
Well, after them.
Oh, confounded tombstone ran right into one. Can't see a thing.
Where are you, Lestrade?
Over here, but I can't see any signs of... Oh,
it's no good. It's no good they've got away. We might as well give in to this darkness and hold a council of war.
where are you, Mr. Holmes? I can't see you.
Wait, I'll strike a match. There.
What you make of it, Holmes? I swear there was Anselmo's figure glowing there. And then it seemed to vanish suddenly into thin air. I don't believe in ghosts, but...
Ghosts, child's play. A phosphorescent costume and a large black cloak suddenly pulled round to cover it. What do you say, Lestrade?
I'll say there's no such things as ghosts, and I'm going to prove it.
How?
I'm going to open up that coffin and see if it's really Anselmo's body inside. Come on.
No, that's the grave. Over there, with the coffin lying askance beside it.
Yes, and the gravedigger's pickaxe still leaning against it. Stand back, gentlemen. I'll soon tell you who's inside this coffin.
Wait a minute, Lestrade. Wait a moment. Give me that pickaxe. That's it. Now, gentlemen, let's retire behind this extremely large tombstone over here.
I wish I knew what you was up to, Holmes.
So do I. We don't know anything until we strike open that coffin there.
Yes, and so we shall. That is precisely what Dr. Anselmo expected me to do. I see the whole thing now, but we shall take the precaution of bettering his plan by opening the coffin from long range. I'm going to throw this pickaxe. Keep your heads behind this monument. I may be wrong, but I don't think so.
By George, Mr. Holmes. You saved me life.
And my own, Lestrade. Judging by that blast, the coffin must have been positively stuffed with explosives.
Then, Anselmo isn't dead?
Oh, yes, he's dead.
But the figure we saw just now...
most likely an accomplice of Mrs. Anselmo's in stage makeup that gave him a reasonable likeness to the dead man.
What a fantastic plan.
Well, Dr. Anselmo was a fantastic man. He really did plan to literally reach out from beyond the grave to kill me, with his wife helping to carry out those last wishes. You see, she never forgave me for putting him in prison either.
And you mean that all that rigmarole about falling pictures and spilled salt was organized by Mrs. Anselmo after her husband's death?
Oh, undoubtedly. It wasn't very complicated if you think about it. Her confederate appears to be a reasonably adept housebreaker, but all in all, a very pointless project.
Pointless it may be, Mr. Holmes. The fact remains they're guilty of attempted murder.
They are indeed.
Yes, but they've escaped.
Oh, I don't think they'll be hard to find. I imagine they expect the three of us are now dead. Lestrade, if you drop around with your men to 116 Queens Road, Bayswater, I think you may just find them all there.
Holmes, there's one thing about which I'm still unsure.
What is that, old fellow?
This mysterious sickness you've been suffering from. Did someone arrange that?
No. That had nothing to do with any Anselmo.
Ah, then...
Yes, indeed. The diagnosis is actually very simple, yes, Doctor. Like several of your recent patients, I have had a case of the influenza.
Well, Doctor, for a while there, you really believed that Anselmo was going to make good his threats, didn't you?
Yes, I must admit I did.
You know something?
What?
So did I. Boy, you wouldn't catch me chasing flaming ghosts around a cemetery.
You don't like delving into supernatural mysteries, I take it.
Not for me.
No, I suppose not. You'd rather delve into the mystery of what makes a good wine.
Oh, there's no mystery about that. At least not about what makes Petri wine good wine. That's easy to understand. In the first place, the Petri family has been making wine for generations. And their business has always been family-owned and operated ever since its inception. Because of this, the Petri family has been able to hand on down from father to son, and from that father to his son, everything they've ever learned about the art of turning luscious, hand-picked grapes into fragrant, delicious wine. And when you realize that the family has been making wine since way back in the 1800s, believe me, they've learned plenty. That's why no matter whether you want a wine to serve before meals, with meals, or at any time, you can't go wrong with a Petri wine. Because Petri took time to bring you good wine. And now, Dr. Watson, what new Sherlock Holmes adventure do you have in store for us next week?
A most unusual one, Mr. Foreman, in which a man, in the simple act of stepping back into his own home to get his umbrella, vanishes in broad daylight.
Tonight's Sherlock Holmes adventure is written by Dennis Green and Bruce Taylor and is based on an incident in the Sir Arthur Conan Doyle story, The Mazarin Stone. Mr. Rathbone appears through the courtesy of Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer and Mr. Bruce through the courtesy of Universal Pictures, where they are now starring in the Sherlock Holmes series. The Petri Wine Company of San Francisco, California, invites you to tune in again next week, same time, same station.
Oh, the Petri family took the time to bring you such good wine. So when you eat and when you cook, remember Petri wine.
Yes, Petri wine, made by the Petri Wine Company, San Francisco, California.
Petri.
This is Bill Foreman, saying goodnight for the Petri family. Sherlock Holmes comes to you from the Don Lee Studios in Hollywood.
That closes the casebook on another Project Audion audio drama recreation. Heard in this episode were Craig Wichman in New York, Paul Arbisi in Illinois, Glenn Haskell in Kansas, Jeff Billard in Massachusetts, Jane Beverly in New Jersey, Richard Durrington in Idaho, and Vincent Caruso in New York. The script was adapted for this production by Mr. Wichman, and production and direction were handled by Larry Groby in Dallas. If you enjoyed this show, it's no mystery what you should do now. You should click the nearest like button or let your friends know. And until next time, thanks for listening.
You were about to pay the penalty, Mr. Holmes. Nothing can save you. Come with me, Emily. I'm sorry, Madeline. Come with me, Madeline.
Oh, soon he forgets.
He was a bit of a, I think he was a bit of a player.
Oh, she.